Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Brachos Daf Lamed Aleph. We're on Lamed Amud Beis, the last line. Says the Gemara, Marber Ravina Avad Hilula Livrei. He made a wedding for his son. Chazinu l'Rabbana. He noticed that the Rabbanim in attendance, they were excessively joyous and happy, and he was concerned that it might lead to frivolity. So what did he do? Says the Gemara, I see he brought kasa de mukar, expensive glass, bas arba me'azuzi, worth 400 zuz, v'tavar kamayu, and he shattered it in their presence, v'atzivu, and this dampened their mood. Explains Maharsha, the hint, the remez was, just as a glass which comes from afar, which originates from sand, is very fragile and tends to break easily, so to us, human beings who originate min afar, from sand, we too are fragile, and we must protect our ruchnius, we must safeguard our spirituality and ensure that we don't come to frivolity. Continues the Gemara, Rav Ashi Avad Hilul Livrei. He made a wedding for his son, Chazinu l'Rabbanon. He too noticed that the Rabbanim in attendance, that were kabat chitu, were excessively joyous. So what did he do? I see kasa du zegisa chivrasa. He brought a glass made of white material, a white glass, a very special, expensive glass. V'tavar kamayu, and he broke it in front of them, v'atzivu, and he sat in them. Amalei Rabbanon l'Rav Amnuna Zuti. They turned to Rav Amnuna Zuti b'hilulei, in the middle of the wedding of the Marbrei de Ravina, and they asked him, Lishrilan Mar, sing for us. Now he noticed that their mood is a little excessive, and he was concerned. So he responds as follows: Amar lahu, Vailon de Misnin, Vailon de Misnan. Woe that we were going to die! Woe that we were going to die! And he meant to send them a message. One is meant to keep his eye on the future and safeguard himself, and have the Olam Haba in the forefront of his mind, and guard yourself from frivolity. Continues the Gemara, Amrele, so they responded to him, okay, so you gave us a very powerful message. A person is supposed to keep in mind his future. The fact that his time in this world is limited, that is the way to battle the Yetzer Hara. Amrele anan manani ba'asrich, is anything that we could respond to you? You've given us the most powerful message. Is anything more to say? Amr Luz, he told them, actually, ha-Torah v'ha-mitzvah, the Magnei Alon. The Torah and the mitzvah that are protecting us, where are they? Meaning, one is meant preferably to battle the Yetzer Hara by using the power of Torah and mitzvah. As the Gemara mentioned earlier in Maseches Brachos, preferably one should battle the Yetzer Hara by immersing himself in Torah. The concept of Yom HaMisa, the day of death, is something merely used as a last resort. Preferably one should use positive energy, positive reinforcement, use the Torah and the mitzvah to protect us from the Yetzer Hara. Tosfos says that based on this Gemara, we have the minhag of breaking a glass during a wedding, Mikan Nagu, based on the first two stories, Nagu l'shaber schuchis b'nesuin, to break a glass during our wedding in order to safeguard ourselves from coming to litzanis from schuk. Continues the Gemara. One is not meant to fill entirely his mouth with laughter in this world. Shenemar, only then will our mouth fill up with schok. When the goyim will recognize, will say, wow, look what Hashem did with Klal Yisrael. This is speaking about la'asid lavai, but not in this world. Omar Alav al Rish Lakish, they related about Rish Lakish, indeed he followed this directive. He never filled his mouth entirely with laughter, since he heard it from Rabbi Yochanan, his Rebbe. So from when he heard it, he followed this directive in its entirety. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabban, ein oindim lispalo. One approaches tefillah, one is not meant to stand and daven, from coming from a din Torah lawsuit, an intricate halachic discourse, a clear-cut halacha, since this will enable him to go straight into davening without being tempted to think and to contemplate this deep halachic discourse that he's involved in. Therefore, it's better to enter tefillah coming from a clear-cut halacha. Just an easy clear-cut halacha doesn't involve debate and contemplation, rather than a din Torah or a deep halachic discourse. Continues the more. What are the examples of a clear-cut halacha? which is advised for somebody to learn that halacha prior to tefillah. For example, says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, Ki Hadar Rav Zera, like the following halacha in the name of Rav Zera. Rav Zera, but Nais Yisrael Lechmir Al Atzman, Jewish women accepted a chumrah stringency upon themselves. Shafilu royos tipas dam kechardol. Even if they only merely see a teeny drop of dam nida, the size of a mustard seed, yesheves alav shiva nekim, they maintain the halacha, the most stringent halacha of a zava. Since all these halachas of nida and ziva, very involving, very detailed, very intricate, and tend to confuse. They tend to confuse people, and there's room for confusion and error. The Bnei Yisrael or machmer, they assume the highest form of stringency. Even a drop of blood requires counting 7 clean days. So this is a halacha psuka, doesn't involve debate and contemplation. This is an appropriate halacha to proceed tefillah with. Another example says the Gemara, Rav Amar Ki Hadar Rav Oshia, Damar Rav Oshia, Marim Adam, a person could be crafty regarding his grain, and to enter the home, to bring it into the house together with his shaft. It wasn't winnowed properly. Kadei, why is he doing it this way? In order to allow his animal to eat and be exempt from removing the meiser from his grain. Rashi explains as follows: in order for grain to be chayav b'truma meiser, to be obligated to do the mitzvah of trumas meisers, we require 2 conditions. Firstly, it needs to be a finished product, which happens through winnowing, through smoothing out the heap of the processed grain. That's number 1. Number 2, it needs to be brought into the home through the front door. Now, if one brings it to the home prior to its having been nigmar malachto, it wasn't completed, the process wasn't completed, it is not chayv ma'aser. A person may go ahead and eat this tavua even without trumas and maasers. However, mid the Rabbanon obligated the person to remove trumas and maasers even in this scenario. If he is going to eat a achilas kvai, fixed meal, he can only eat achilas arai, a snack, an informal meal, or he can feed it to his animal, which is considered to be an informal suda. That is allowed when he had brought it into the home with his chaff before it was the process was completed. So Rashi says a person can be crafty in order to exempt himself from tumas and maasers. What's he going to do? He's not going to complete the malacha. He's not going to fully process his grain. He'll bring it into the home with its moitz, with its covering, with its chaff. This way, it will never be chayiv in tumas and maasers, and he can eat achilas arai, a temporary meal, and as well as feed it to his animals. So once again, Rav Oshia said as follows: Marim adam atvosa, he can be crafty with his tvua machnisa, but moitzla, bring it into the home together with its encasing. Kedei shtei behemto yecheles, so that his animal could eat from it uptum and a meiser and be exempt from meiser. This is a straightforward halacha which doesn't involve depth and contemplation and rationalization, and therefore is something to be learned immediately before tefillah. Another example of a short form halacha of Ibayisema Kader Rav Huna, Dam Rav Huna, Amar Rav Zeira, Hamekis Dam Behemis Kachim. If one lets blood out of a behemoth's kachim, a behemoth which is sanctified, which is a carbon, and he does bloodletting on it prior to the akrava, what happens to that blood? Osabana, one may not derive benefit from it. Umay alan. If he does, he is liable. He needs to bring a carbon me'ilah. So this is a straightforward halacha. Rashi explains, although regarding dam karban, we know that the dam of a karban that was already nishchat, was slaughtered, that dam contains no me'ilah. That is merely regarding dam that is meant for the mizbeach. And once we bring the dam on the mizbeach, once the dam was already brought onto the mizbeach, after Zrikas Damim, there was already an atonement. Certainly, there's no Me'ilah. This case, we're speaking about taking blood from a live animal, from a live carbon. Therefore, certainly Me'ilah does apply. So, in conclusion, we have 3 examples of short halachas. Either it's the Rav Zera with the Nida, or it's the Meiser, or it's regarding Me'ilah by the Dam. Says the Gemara, okay, so now we have a Bra'isa which teaches us what is the most preferred manner to enter Tefillah through a halacha, psuka, klerker halacha. We had our Mishnah, which indicated a bit different. One is meant to be oimed lispal through kavod rosh, through an attitude of reverence. Says the Gemara, indeed, the Rabbanon followed Kmas Nisan, the directive of the Mishnah, to be oimed lispal, to enter tefillah with an attitude of kavod rosh, of humility and reverence. Rav Ashi Ovid Kebraisi followed the instructions of this Braisa, which requires one to learn a halacha psuka prior to davening. Tana Rabbanon. One should only approach tefillah not should not do it with atzvos, through sorrow, in a mood of sorrowness, atzvos, laziness, not with through words of ridicule, not through schoik is words of frivolity, words of leitzanus, of ridicule, lightheadedness. It's not appropriate to enter tefillah in this manner. Idle words, idle chatter. Ella, what is the most preferred manner to approach tefillah? Simcha shal mitzvah, through joy associated with doing a mitzvah. Rashi explains, Simcha shal mitzvah means, for example, learning Torah. One learns Torah that gladdens the heart, as the pasuk says, Pikudi ashar mishar mesamche leiv. One should learn a bit before approaching tefillah. This will put the person in the right perspective, in the right frame of mind, to have the right kavanah through tefillah, rather than sichas, chay, kalis roish, atzvutz, atzlos. All these things inhibit a person's ability to concentrate, to focus, and to connect with Hashem through tefillah. Continues more, v'chein. Similarly, a person shouldn't take leave from his friend, not through leitzanus, through ridicule, through leitzanus, through schoik is frivolity, lightheadedness, just idle chatter. Ella, what is the preferred manner one should take leave of his friend? Some say mitzvah, the gears of the Goyin. One should take leave of his friend with an upbeat spiritual message. We find similarly regarding the Nevi'im or Rishonim, the Nevi'im of old time, that they made sure to complete their words, even though sometimes they contain the words of threatening words, of threatening nature to describing the einish, the punishment that we fall the Yidden. Nevertheless, they made sure always to conclude their message with divrei shvach v'tanchumin, with words of praise and consoling. Here too, explains Rashi, one is meant to enter his tefillah with consoling messages of spirituality, uplifting words. For instance, says Rashi, like Tila LaDavid, which is the Ashrei we recite, which includes Shvach v'Tanchumen, like Ritzayin Rev Yas. Hashem fulfills the needs, the desires, the will of those who fear Him. Shem Hashem Eshkolai Oyavav. Hashem safeguards all that love Him. For instance, Rashi says the psukim we say prior to Shemini Esrei B'Marav Ki Lo Yitish Hashem Es Amoy. Don't worry, Hashem will never forsake His nation. Tosfos points out that this is compatible with our Mishnah. We just mentioned before that the Rabbanan, they adopted the directive in the Mishnah of Kavod Rosh. Says Tosfos, that is compatible with the Simcha Shal Mitzvah that is mentioned in this brisa. Both moods are compatible. Kavod Rosh, an attitude of reference, together with Simcha Shal Mitzvah, joy associated with a mitzvah. That is not frivolity, that is not excessive happiness. That is a Simcha, that is a calm, soothing, uplifting spiritual mood. So Tosfos points out that even the Rabbanan, who followed the mission of Kavod Rosh, nevertheless, they would combine Kavod Rosh with Simcha Shal Mitzvah. Again, Tosfos is with the very Torah, involving himself in Torah study, and that's why Tosfos concludes, just like Rashi, we say words of Torah Ashrei. Tosfos adds Psukei de Zimra, which we recite prior to Shemini Esrei, is meant to put a person in the proper frame of mind of Simcha, together with the Kavod Rosh that is required. Continues the Gemara. V'chein tana mari bra bar breid Rav Huna breid Rav Rebbe Abba. Al yipater adam mechaveroi. Person, when he leaves his friend, he takes leave. He should not leave ella only metoich dvar halacha. They should speak a dvar halacha. V'shemetoich kach zechreu. Because in this way he'll remember him. He'll remember him better. Because when people's friendship and association is based on physical properties, a physical association, a worldly association, a gashmistic connection, that is something which is temporary, it's not everlasting. But when they are nifrad metoich dvar halacha, they indicate that our connection, our friendship, our acquaintance, our association is of a spiritual nature. It's connected through Torah, through our neshamas, which are spiritual beings. That friendship endures forever. Shemetoich kach zechreu. He will remember him. It is a spiritual relationship which is everlasting. Kiha, like the following example, Rav Kahana al-Vui li Rav Sima bar Ashi, Mepum Nahara. Rav Kahana escorted Rav Sima Rashi from Pumnahara, from that place until a place called Beit Sinisa, the Bavel. Now, when they got there, Kimota Lahasam, Beit Sinisa, the Bavel, this was a place that had date trees, palm trees. Amalei, so he asked them as follows: Mar Vade Damre Inshi. Is it true what people say about these dates? Hani Tanisa, the Bavel, the dates in Bavel, Isnu are around from way back. Mi'adam Rishon Adashta, around from the time of Adam Rishon until now. Is that true? Amalei, so he responded to him, at Karta Musa, you reminded me something. The Rabbi Yisrael Chanina. The Amar Rabbi Yisrael Chanina. Maidachsiv. How do you interpret the following pasuk? Ba'oretz asher lo yo'avar ba'ish. A land that nobody passed through, Adam Sham, and nobody dwelled there. It's a repetitious pasuk. Since nobody passed there, nobody passed through that area, how could there be somebody that dwelled there? So the pasuk is repeating itself. What is the meaning of this pasuk? Ella, but rather, to teach you as follows. The pasuk is teaching us a lesson. Any land that Adam Rishon decreed, this should be a place of yishuv, a place of dwelling. This Yashva indeed became a place of yishuv, of dwelling. A place where Adam Rishon did not decree, this should be a place where people will live. Loinus Yashva indeed did not turn out to become a place of dwelling. So this is the meaning of the pasuk. Do you know why Ba'aret Ashaloyav Ish? Do you know why nobody passes in this land? V'layashav Adam Sham, because Adam Rishon hadn't declared that this should be a makayim of Yishuv. So this was a dvar agada, a word of spirituality, which he was nifrad mimenu, with which he bade him farewell. So he was makayim this halacha to take leave on a spiritual note. Ramadchai escorted Rav Shimon Rashi from Me'agrunya, from one place at Beikipi, all the way to Beikipi, Amala at Beidura till Beidura. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabban. HaMespalel tzor shichav nesliba shemayim. Person must direct his heart to Hashem and fully concentrate on his tefillah. Abashol Eimer, similar davar, a reference to this in the following pasuk. Tachen libam takshiv aznecha. When you direct your heart, Hashem's ear will listen, your tefillah will be accepted in Shemayim. Tanya, Amar Yehuda, Kachayim in Hagash Rav Akiva. This was the custom, the practice of Rav Akiva when he davened. Shoyim Yispalim at Tzibur, when he davened together with the Tzibur, Hayim at Katzev Ha'olah, he would daven short and he would finish Bnei Torach Tzibur, because not to burden, on account of the Torach, of the burdening of the Tzibur, he didn't want them to have to wait for him. However, if he davened privately, then he would engage in a very lengthy tefillah process. In fact, one would leave him davening in one corner and come back later, you would find him in a different corner of the room. How could that be? How did that happen? Because he bowed and he spread himself out on the floor. He experienced a very lengthy and involving tefillah when he was biyechidus. Continues the Gemara. One should daven specifically in a home that has windows, and the place can say that this is conducive to kavanah. When one sees the sky and he sees shamayim, that puts a person in the right frame of mind of Yiras Shamayim, and is conducive to his tefillah. The windows were open. This is speaking about the tefillah of Daniel. So we see there's a point to have windows. Perhaps one may think it is appropriate to daven the entire day. No, Zimna Tlasa, we have 3 tefillahs, 3 times. Perhaps this only happened, he only davened when he got to Goyla, when he got to Gola. Says the Gemara, no, Kvar Nema du Ovid, Min Kadmas Dana. He used to do this even previously, before arriving at Gola, he used to daven. Person could daven in any direction that he chooses. Talmud Leima, Neged Yerushalem, he davened opposite Yerushalem, that is the appropriate direction. Perhaps I would think, sure, a person is meant to daven 3 tefillahs, but perhaps he joins them together into one tefillah, he davens it all at once. David teaches us the chsiv erev, avokev, tzarayim. One is meant to daven at 3 different points in the day. Continues the Gemara, one's voice is meant to be heard when he's davening Shemon Esrei. No, this we know, we derive it from Chana. One is meant to daven quietly. Her voice was not heard. As the Gemara said earlier, when one davens quietly, that indicates that he has full trust and belief in Hashem's ability to hear his tefillah even when it's quiet. Perhaps one should first focus on his own needs, request his tzrachim, and afterwards the rest of tefillah. No, says the Gemara, one is not meant to daven in that order. This is taught us by Shlomo Shenemar Lishmoya Larina. Tefillah, there's a specific sequence. First comes Rina, then Tefillah, says the Gemara. Rina zu Tefillah. Rina means, Tefillah means Shvach, praise of Hashem. That is the first step of davening. One praises Hashem, recognizes Hashem, elevates himself, comes close to Hashem. At that point, it is appropriate to go to the next point of Tefillah Zubakasha and request from Him our needs. Continues the Gemara, Ein Omer Davar Ach Emes V'Yatzif. Now, Emes V'Yatzif contains the very Shvach, praise for Hashem, for the Nisim, miracle Hashem performs for us, He performed and will perform for us. Emes V'Yatzif speaks about the past, mainly Emes V'Amunah, mainly about the future. This is considered to be the very Shvach. Perhaps, after Emes V'Yatzif, immediately one could start speaking about his own tzrachim, his own needs. Before starting Shemona Esrei, says the Gemara, no. One is not meant to request his needs after Emes V'Yatzif, but only during Shemona Esrei. And as the Gemara says, Aval Achar Tefillah, after he finishes davening, he's already only at the end, where we say Yiratzon Kain Yitzhar. At that point, he can go ahead and lengthen his tefillah and include anything he wants. Afilu Seder Vidui Shem Kippurim, even the whole entire Seder Vidui, the confession of Yom Kippur, he's allowed to put in there. It's Mernavi, you learn to Simon Allah Amar Avchir Barasham Rab Al Bisha Amru Shoyel Adam Tzracha B'Shmei Tefillah. Shmei Tefillah is the appropriate place for a person to insert his own personal needs. In Baloima Achat Tefillasai, if a person chooses to daven after his tefillah, Afilu Keseder Shem Kippurim Omer, a person chooses at the end of his tefillah, the end of Shemona Esrei, when he's finished the 18 brachos, person chooses to daven a very lengthy tefillah there, he's allowed to, whether it's b'lashon yachid, b'lashon rabim, if it's his own needs, if it's other people's needs, that is the appropriate place to be marach, even like the Seder Yom Kippurim. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Amnuna, Kama Hilchasa Gvur Varsa. Many important halachas we derive. We can derive from those psukim that describe Chanas Tefillah. We learn many halachas from there regarding Hilchas Tefillah. Number one, she was speaking on her heart. What does that mean? We must involve our hearts, our kavanah when we daven. That is the true tefillah. Second halacha, rak svaseha nois. Only her lips were moving. Mikan, we learn from here, l'mispalel, one who davens sheyachtich b'svasav. Although you're not having your words being audible, it is not being heard, you're merely whispering, but your lips should enunciate the words, sheyachtich b'svasav, should enunciate the syllables and the words, even though you're not expressing them loudly. The koil yishama, her voice wasn't heard. Mikan she'asa agbiya koil b'tefillah, some say la'ashmiya koil b'tefillah, one's tefillah is not meant to be heard, one's meant to whisper. V'yachsheveh Eli l'shikoyer, Eli HaKoyin, consider her to be an intoxicated shikar, drunkard. Explain to Mefarshim why. Why did he think she was drunk? Because she was being very marach in tefillah. She was being very lengthy in her tefillah experience, and this seemed to be. It appeared to be like somebody who's drunk who just babbles without meaning. So he mistook her for a drunkard. Says the Gemara, although he was mistaken in his impression, but nevertheless we learn from halacha that Eli wasn't too happy about the fact that in his mind she was davening while intoxicated. So we learn from here that it's not appropriate for a shikar, for a drunkard to daven. Until when will you be drunk and daven in this manner? We learn from here, one who notices something inappropriate that his friend is doing. Taisus points out, even though this is not an Issa D'Oraisa, it's merely something inappropriate, nevertheless, he needs to point this out to him and reproof him. She responded to Eli's accusation and she said as follows: Lo yadoini, not my master. So explains the Gemara. She told him, you're not a master in this context. Apparently the divine presence is not resting at you at the present moment. You're accusing me of davening drunk. That's not happening. It's not true. You're mistaken. Apparently you don't have the proper clarity. You don't have the proper siyata d'shmaya and ruach HaKodesh that you can make such a grave error. Ikadamri some have a different version. She did it in a question form. Lo ya'adanata. Are you not a master? It was a rhetorical question. Don't you have the Shechina Ruach HaKodesh by you? Could it be that you have Ruach HaKodesh and you nevertheless would don me, you judged me in a guilty form and not l'kav schus? You weren't don l'kav schus. You didn't presume that I was innocent. You accused me of davening as a shikar. Don't you know? I'm a person with an embittered spirit. I'm going through a very difficult time. I'm barren, I'm childless. Surely I haven't drank any of this stuff, wine or beer. I'm not intoxicated. I'm merely davening, expressing my tsar, my sorrow, and my bitterness. We learn from here the fact that she responds to him and she clears her record. A person who is accused by somebody, but he doesn't, it's not true, it was baseless. He needs to respond and clear himself. That's why she responded to him and she cleared herself, she cleared her record that no, I am not drunk at all. Continues the Gemara, Chana said, don't place your maiden Amoscha, don't consider it to be a Bas Blial, one who has no yoke of Hashem. Says the Gemara, one who's drunk, who davens, it is akin, is equivalent to one who's idol worshipping. Explains the Rashba, because when one is drunk, his mind isn't really clear, his mind is convoluted, and he can conjure up images, false images of Hashem, and this is reminiscent of Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, we learned this from a Gzera Shava, Ksiv Hachal Lefnei Bnas Blial, because she says to him, don't consider it to me a Bas Blial. You accuse me of davening in this manner, and you consider it to me a Blas Blial, Ksiv Hasam, and there it says, Yotza Anashim Bnei Blial Bekirbacha, men Bnei Blial have left you, and that is referring to ones who are worshipping Avodah Zarah. Ma'alahal and Avodah Zarah, there the term Blial is referring to ones who Avodah Zarah. Afkan, we connected with the Gzera Shava to here that Bas Blial is a reference of Avodah Zarah, and that's the message. When one davens in that state, it is akin to being Oved Avodah Zarah. Tais explains that the halacha of a shikr al yispalel is a shikr who cannot speak properly lifnei hamelech, cannot present himself in front of the king, but one who is merely a shasi, only drank a bit, that would be okay, and the details are delineated in Shulchan Aruch. Continues the Gemara. Vayan Eli vayomer lechi l'shalom. Go to peace. Omar Belezer Mikan, we learn from here, the choshad is chaveroi, but davar shein boy, one who falsely accuses his friend of something, shetzarach lefaish, he needs to appease him. Lo yoy, not only that, shetzarach levarchoi, he needs to give him a bracha. Shenemar v'lekei Yisrael yitin shelosech. Eli appeased her, and he gave her a bracha that Hashem should fulfill her request and grant her a child. So we see that one who's choshad chaver accuses his friend falsely, he must reciprocate by appeasing him and giving him bracha. V'atido nedav atoymar, this is Chana speaking, she made a vow to Hashem atoymar. Hashem tzvakos. Amar Belezer, this way of referring to Hashem tzvakos, Hashem the master of the legions, was unique to Chana. Miyam shebarach HaKadosh Baruch Hu salamai, from the day of creation, there was nobody who referred to Hashem in this manner. Hashem was Chana. V'karasai tzvakos. Amar Chana HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What did she mean? What did she imply by applying this title to Hashem? Rebbeinu Shalaylam, Mikol Tzivay Tzvoy Shabar Tzval Mecha, from all the legions that you created in this world, all the malachim, the neshamayis. Kasher beinecha shatitini ben echad. It's so difficult, Hashem, for you to give me one child. Mashal Madavadam. What is this analogous to the Melech Masavadam? It's a mashal to a king, a human king. Shasa Sud Lavadav, he made a feast for his servants. Boni Echad Vamad al Pesach, comes a pauper, stands by the door, and has a request. Amar lehem, tunuli pusachas, please give me a piece of bread. They don't pay attention to him. Dachak v'nichnas etzamelech, he falls away to the king. Amar and addresses the king. He says, Adoini Amelech, master of the king. Mikol Sudash Asisa, from the entire meal that you made, Kasha Beinecha, is it so difficult in your eyes, Litali Pusa Achas, to give me barely one slice of bread? Seir Tuchana was referring to Hashem with the term Tzvais. You create all the legions in the world. Hashem, I want to be part of it. Grant me a son who will be part of your Tzvei Tzvais, who will serve you and be part of your legion and part of your kingship. From all the Neshamas and Malachim, could you please grant me one son? So in summary, we learn several halachas from Chanas Tefillah. We learn that one is meant to be Mechaven Liboy. We learn that one is meant to be Choitech B'Sfasav, enunciate with one's lips the words of Tefillah. Asur L'Hagbiya Koiloi. A shikar is prohibited from davening. If one notices something wrong, he's meant to offer reproof. If it's a false accusation, then the one that receives the teichacha, the reproof, is meant to clear his record. If one accuses one falsely, Choshed B'Ksherim, he's meant to appease him and to give him a bracha. Continues the Gemara. Chana says, Imroi Sira, if you will see. What is the duplication? Imroi Sira, says the Gemara, Amar Belezer, Amar Chana T'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom. Imroi, if you will see, if you will take note and listen to my tefillah and respond to me, fine, mutav, then all is well. V'im lav, but if not, tira, you will see what I will have to resort to. I will seclude myself with a strange man in front of Elkanah, my husband. He will then go ahead and warn me not to do so again, and then I will do it again. I will seclude myself again. There will be kinoi and stira. In that case, the process of saita applies. Mashkali me saita, they will have to give me to drink the water of saita. And we know that if one drinks the water of saita, there's an interesting consequence. If the person had sinned, then they are terribly punished. But if the person turned out to be innocent, says the Gemara, you would not make your Torah falsehood. And it says in the Torah that if one is found to be innocent, if she's found to be clean and innocent, she will merit zera, seed, children. So a barren woman is childless. If she drinks the meisait that turns out to be clean of sin, free of avera, she is zeichet to have children. I too will resort to this process of saita. I will seclude myself, and I will bring upon myself the obligation to drink meisait, which will lead subsequently to having children. Says the Gemara, Hanicha lemanda Omar. This all works well according to the shita that says Im hoisa akara nifkedes. Pasuk, when the pasuk says v'niksa b'nizra zora, means that if she was barren, she was not akara nifkedes, she will be remembered, she will be granted children. Shaper finds that the system works well. El lemanda Omar, according to the other opinion that explains the pasuk a bit differently. Not that a barren woman will bear children. We're speaking about a woman who does bear children, but she has difficulty, and this will alleviate that difficulty. El lemanda Omar, according to the other shita Omar. If she was accustomed to bearing children with pain, with tsar, with difficulty, she will bear them easily. If she had girls, she would have boys. If they were black, now she would have white children. If they were short, they would be longer. So there's no mention here of a akara, a barren woman who will marry children. If so, how can you explain this? The Sanya, as we learned in the Brisa, the pasuk says, "V'niksa v'nizra zara malamed." This teaches us shemoisa akara. She was barren of kedes. She will be remembered and will be zeicha merit to have children. Divrei Bishma, Amler Akiva. You can't say that. Im Kain, if a person of a isha asaita turns out to be clean, she will be zeicha to children. Yechol kol akaris kulan v'yistatru. Then all the barren women should go ahead and do this process. They will seclude themselves, they will submit themselves to the process of saita and be zeicha to children. That can't be. V'zushalei kilkala nifsedes, a woman who is modest and doesn't want to do this thing, doesn't want to seclude herself with a stranger, nifsedes, she will lose out. It's inconceivable. You can't say that. You can't say that an isha can be zeicha to children on account of her drinking the meisait. Ella, but rather, my opinion is, malamed. The Torah teaches us merely let us bit tsar, if she had pain, let us bit revach, she won't have pain. Ktsarim, if they were short, let us harukim, they will be longer. Shchim, if they were black, let us lebanim, they'll be white. Echad, if she only had one, shnaim, she will have two. So according to this shita, Mayim Royatira. What did Chana mean when she said Royatira? she couldn't be making reference to being zeicha to children on account of Meisaita. According to this shita, that is not true, says the Gemara. You're right, the term is merely speaking in the style of people. It is not meant to teach us anything. So the obvious question is that according to the shita of Rabbi Akiva, that fine, a barren woman won't bear children on account of Meisaita, but it will alleviate her situation. She will benefit from it. It will improve her childbirth experience. So why isn't this an argument? Every woman who has a hard time will go become a Saita. So this is a kasha that Taisus asked. Marsha offers the following solution. He says, a slight improvement in the childbirth experience is not worth it. It's not something that a woman, it's not worth it for her to go and resort to this process of Meisaita. A woman who's absolutely desperate, she's barren, she's an akara, then there's a concern. But a woman who is already bearing children, but merely she has difficulties, we're not concerned that she'll become a saita to alleviate her situation and benefit slightly from the Meisaita. Continues the Gemara. She makes reference 3 times to the word amasecha. Says the Gemara, it's a remiss to misa, to death. Why 3 times the word amasais? You've created 3 times that you examine a woman. You examine a woman on 3 occasions to see if she is liable to die. 3 bondings of death, 3 attachments of death, 3 averes that on account of them she is liable for death. Ve'elohein nida, the mitzvah of nida. Hashem checks and sees and examines if she's fulfilling the mitzvah of nida properly. V'chala, the mitzvah of chala, removing chala from the dove. So these are 3 mitzvahs which Hashem uses as a benchmark to examine the woman, and she is liable for misa if she is not careful with these mitzvahs. The 2 pshat in the Gemara, bitke and difke, depends on the Gemara and Shabbos. One shita says that bitke means that a woman is examined during her shasa sakana, during childbirth. Hashem checks during her shasa sakana whether she's worthy of surviving based on her performance of these mitzvahs. The other pshat of divke misa it means that Hashem that a woman sometimes die young on account of not adhering properly to these mitzvahs. So in any case, she makes reference to these very special, unique mitzvahs of a woman, and she says to Hashem, Kluma varti alachas mehem, did I not fulfill these mitzvahs in their entirety? Please Hashem, let me be zeicha to children. You'll give to your maiden zera anashim, seed of men. Says, what does she mean by zera anashim? Omar Rav Guvra Beguvran, a man who is unique amongst men, who is special, who has significance. Ushmol Amar Zera Shem Moisheach Shnei Anashim. Zera, a child who will anoint 2 people. Uman Inun, what is it referring to? Shaul and David. It was Shmuel who later on anointed Shaul and David as king. So she had prophecy, as Marsha points out. Chana was one of the Nevi'os of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yechon Amar, a different pshat. Zera Sheshachol Kishnei Anashim, a seed, a child who is equivalent in stature to 2 men. Uman Inun, who are they? Moshe v'Aaron, Shenemar Moshe v'Aaron b'Kohen v'Shmuel b'Kori Shmoy. We see that the pasuk equates the spiritual status of Shmuel to Moshe v'Aaron. V'Rabbanan Amri, finally, what does Zera Anashim mean? Zera Anashim, Zera Shemuvla ben Anashim. He should be absorbed in between men. He should be inconspicuous. I don't want to stand out and be a subject of conversation and illicit ayin hara. It's not too tall, not too short. Not too thin, not too heavy. Not too red, not white. Not too brilliant like tipesh, and not too foolish. So I want something that's prominent, that's unique, not something that's truly astonishing, that will be the talk of the town and can elicit ayin hara. I'm the woman that is nitzav imcha bazeh. I'm standing with you here, meaning you're also required to stand with me. Explain to me, why was Eli required to stand? The answer is because she was davening. When somebody is davening, one may not go and sit within his daled amos, within his domain. The daled amos surrounding a person is considered his makom tefillah. Omar B'Shum Alevi Mikan, we learn from here another halacha, one final halacha. Shashalesha b'teretad amishal tefillah. One may not sit down within the four amas of tefillah, and that's what she said. I am the isha nitzeves imacha. Why imacha? With a hey, says Taisus, because imach means together, we're standing together. Imcha means hey, the hey means that you could stand outside the four amas. In the hey, in the fifth amma, over there you can actually sit. Within the four amas you must stand, but outside the four amas, within the fifth amma, you can actually sit down. Continues the Gemara. Elanar zeh spalolti, I davened for this child. Omar Belezer, why did she have to say this? What was the point here? Says Belezer, the following incident occurred, where Shmuel was liable to death, and Chana protested and said, no, I davened for this child, please, let him stay alive. Omar Belezer, Shmuel, moira halacha l'fnei Rabbi Haya. He ruled a halacha in the presence of Eli. Shenemar vayishchus apar, they slaughtered the bull, vayavius hanar Eli, and then they brought the child Shmuel to Eli. Says the Gemara, what's the connection? Because they shechted the par, Eli, that's what they had to bring the child to Eli. Explains the Gemara, Ella, but rather this was the story. Omar lehen Eli, Kiru kohen, go find a kohen to shech the korban. Leisiv lishchit. Chazin Shmuel, so Shmuel, who was very young, he noticed that they were seeking a kohen to do the shechita. He told them, 1 second, why are you seeking a kohen? A kohen is not required for shechita. Shechita bezark shera. Even a non-kohen can shech a korban. That is the halacha. Okay, I saw the kamed de Eli. So they brought him to Eli, and they told Eli what he said. Amar le menalacha. How do you know this halacha? That is zor is kasha v'shechita. Amar le. So Shmuel says simple. Let's take a look at the pasuk. Miksiv v'shachat ha-kohen. Does it say that the kohen should shech? No, it says v'kriva kan. The kohen should bring closer, meaning they should bring the dam. They should start the process of the avodah of the dam. Mikabel ve'elach mitzvah kuna, from receiving the dam, from the second avodah, the shechita, then this kabbalah receiving the dam. From that point on is a requirement upon the kehanim. However, before that, the shechita, mikan we learn from here, the shechita, shekher bezar, a shechita is allowed to be done by a zar. Amar Leis, Eli responded, indeed you are right. Miu, however, moira halacha fnei ramachat, you rule the halacha in front of your master, and that incurs very grave consequences, since it threatens, undermines the whole tradition, the whole system of the Torah tradition of Klal Yisrael, which was handed down from generation to generations through the great leaders of the generations. And therefore one is liable to Misa, to receive death, on account of him going ahead and preempting the Rav. And he is liable to Misa b'dei Shemayim. Chana heard about this because Tzafcha command. She yelled in front of him. She declared, I am the woman at Daven. It was my tefillos that you remember that brought about this child. Let me punish him, let him die. I will request mercy. Hashem will give you even a greater, a more prominent child. So the mother said no. She responds, I daven for this child, explains Marsha. My tefillos were invested in this child. I don't want a child as a result of your tefillos. What about my tefillos, my tears that I invested into this child? That can't go for naught. Please let him live. Continues the Gemara. She was speaking on her heart. What is al-liba coming to teach us? There's a remes here. Omar al-iske liba. She was referring to something regarding her heart. Omar lefan of Rebbeinu Shalem. She told Hashem, everything you've created, every limb in a woman has a purpose, has a reason, has a plan. Nothing was for waste, for naught. Einayim lirois, eyes to see, as naim lishmoya, ears to hear, choitim l'riach, a nose to smell, peladaber, a mouth to speak, yadayim la'asvem malacha, hands to do work with, reglaim lahalach behem, feet to walk with, dadim lahanek behem, breasts to nurse a child. If so, dadim shahalal shanasat halibi, these dadim, the breasts that you placed on my heart, as the Gemara said earlier, Hashem places the breasts of a woman opposite the heart, connected makam bina. So why did you give me this? Lama loy Why? Lama, why did you give them to me? Loila hanek behem. Was it not for the purpose to nurse a child? It can't be, it was for no reason. If so, teili ben ve'anek behem. Give me a child that I can nurse. Continues the Gemara. V'omar Abelezer, Shon Yosef Zimra. Kal yeshev b'tanis b'Shabbos. One, Ktaisus explains, one who had an ominous dream, is required to have a tainis chalim to fast as an atonement. And if one needs to do it on Shabbos, which is a time that everybody's involved in Einik Shabbos and delighting with the pleasures of Shabbos, it's very difficult to refrain. It is a very difficult tanis. Koirin lo exardina shashim shana. As a result of his reward of his tanis, they atone for him. Even a very grave decree. The person had a gzeira that he will suffer his entire life. Shivim shana as a reference to one's entire life that gets atoned and is done away with. V'afal bikain, says the Gemara. Even though one is obliged to, he resorts to a tanis on Shabbos, but since he is transgressing, he's being over on Einik Shabbos, they come back and they punish him on account of him having neglected the delight of Shabbos. If so, what's the solution? My takanti, what should he do? He should fast another tainus to atone for his first tainus. Surely he needed the first tainus because he had an ominous dream. However, since he did something which wasn't so preferred, it was something which incurred a neglect of Einik Shabbos. That too is somewhat of an avera which requires an additional tainus to atone for that. Says the Gemara, remember Lezer, Chana, hiticha dvarim klapi mala, Chana, she tossed words, she flung towards heaven in a complaint, in a challenging mode. Shenamar vatispal al Hashem, she davened on Hashem, lama sheticha dvarim klapi mala, she flung her words towards heaven. It is something that one is not really meant to do. One is meant to daven in a more respectful manner. He too flung words towards Hashem. You've turned their hearts away from you. Hashem, so to speak, you're responsible for the fact that the Yidden turned away from you. What do we find that Hashem came back and he concurred with Eliyahu's argument, as it says, I have caused them to turn away since I created the Yetzer Hara within them. So Hashem acknowledges that is the Yetzer Hara that He created that caused them to turn away from Him.